Clara broke her last piece of bread in half for a wounded stranger, never knowing the starving man at her feet was the Alpha King, and that every soul in Frost Hollow was being judged by what happened next. Snow swept through the village gate in sharp white sheets as the stranger lay motionless beside the frozen road, one hand pressed against his torn coat. No one moved to help him. The villagers stood beneath their wool hoods, guarding their baskets as if kindness itself might empty them. No one feeds him. Varric Hale ordered from the stone steps of the meeting hall. "Anyone who disobeys loses a week's rations." Clara felt the small loaf in her hand grow heavier. It was all she had left. Half was meant for Ellen, the feverish child waiting in Clara's cottage. The rest was supposed to carry Clara through the night. Mira Hale noticed her hesitation and smiled. "Go on, Ashbourne. Prove you care more about a stranger than your own people." The wounded man opened his eyes. They were gray, almost silver, and far too steady for someone so close to freezing. He did not beg. That made the silence worse. Clara stepped forward. Varric's voice hardened. "Do not test me, girl." She looked at the stranger's pale lips, then at the dark stains spreading beneath his coat. She remembered another winter, another body on cold ground, and a crowd that had chosen not to see. Clara broke the bread. The sound was soft, but every face turned toward her. She placed one half in the stranger's hand and closed his fingers around it. "Eat slowly," she whispered. "You'll make yourself sick." His gaze moved from the bread to her thin face, and the other half belongs to someone who needs it. So do you. Clara did not answer. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us love finds the broken. Now, back to Clara. The stranger tried to stand, but his knees gave way. Clara caught his arm before he struck the snow. A strange heat pulsed beneath his skin, fierce enough to surprise her, yet his body shook with cold. "My name is Elias," he said. "Clara!" Behind them, doors began closing. One by one, the villagers disappeared into their homes as the storm rolled down from the mountains. Varric watched from the steps, suspicion narrowing his eyes. Clara ignored him. She pulled Elias toward the narrow path leading to her cottage at the edge of Frost Hollow. Inside, she used her last pieces of firewood and set the remaining bread beside Elend's bed. Then she opened Elias's coat. The wound beneath it was edged with thin black veins. Shadow poison. Clara's breath caught. "What attacked you?" Elias studied her carefully. "Something that should never have crossed the village barrier." She reached for the wound. The moment her fingers touched his skin, silver light flashed beneath her palm. Elias went still. Beneath the cottage floor, an ancient crescent symbol awakened for the first time in 12 years. And the man Clara had saved looked at her as though he had finally found the answer he had crossed a kingdom to seek. The silver light vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Clara's hand trembling above Elias's wound. For one suspended moment, neither of them spoke. The cottage seemed to hold its breath with them. Then Elend whimpered from the narrow bed beside the hearth. Clara turned at once. The child's cheeks were flushed, but her lips had taken on a faint gray color. "She was better this morning," Clara said, pressing the back of her hand to Elend's forehead. Elias pushed himself upright despite the pain. His gaze settled on the thin black lines beneath the child's skin. "How long has she been drinking from the village well?" Clara looked at him sharply. "Everyone drinks from it." "That does not answer me." His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of command. Clara almost resented it. Almost. 3 days. Her aunt's rain barrel froze, so I brought water from the square. Elias glanced toward his own wound. the same dark tracing curled along its edges. Clara saw the connection at the exact moment he did. "The water," she whispered. "Something is wrong with it. Outside." The storm pressed snow against the windows. Frost Hollow had blamed poor harvests, sick livestock, and every fever on Clara for years. No one had questioned the well. No one except the stranger now sitting at her table. "I should tell Varric," she said. Elias caught her wrist before she could stand, then released it immediately, as though surprised by his own movement. "And what will you show him, Elin? A sick child he can blame on winter? Your wound, a wound he can blame on the forest?" Clara stared at him. "Then what do you suggest, Proof?" The word landed between them like a stone. Elin stirred again, and Clara bent to soothe her. She whispered until the child's breathing softened. When she looked back, Elias was watching her with an expression she could not read. "You have done this before," he said. "Taken care of everyone while no one takes care of you." Clara pulled the blanket higher over Aylin's shoulders. "People do what they must. That is not the same as what they choose." His words unsettled her more than they should have. She moved to the floor beside the bed, intending to remain awake, but exhaustion dragged at her eyes. The last thing she remembered was Elias placing his coat over her shoulders. Hours later, Clara woke to silence. The fire had nearly died, and Elias was gone. Panic rose until she saw his shadow outside the window. He stood beside the small stone well behind her cottage, one hand resting on its frozen rim. A faint golden glow disappeared beneath his palm. By the time Clara opened the door, he was already walking back toward her. "What were you doing?" she asked. "Looking for water." His answer came too quickly. Clara approached the well and lowered the old bucket. She expected the hollow scrape of ice. Instead, she heard a splash. The bucket returned, filled with clear water, warmer than the winter air and untouched by the dark metallic smell of the village well. Clara turned toward Elias. His face revealed nothing, but the tear in his coat had shifted, exposing the wound beneath. The black veins were fading, and the flesh had nearly closed. No ordinary traveler healed that quickly. No ordinary soldier carried power strong enough to wake a dead well. Clara held his silver gaze as suspicion tightened around her heart. "You are not who you said you are." Elias did not deny it. Somewhere beneath the cottage, the ancient crescent symbol pulsed once more, as if waiting to hear his answer. Clara kept her eyes on Elias until the silence between them became heavier than the snow pressing against the cottage walls. He glanced toward Elin before answering. "I was a soldier," he said. "That part was true." Clara folded her arms. "Soldiers do not wake dead wells." A faint shadow crossed his face. "Then perhaps Frost Hollow has forgotten what still lives beneath it." He would say no more. By sunrise, the storm had weakened to a pale curtain drifting across the village. Clara filled 2 glass jars with water from the revived well, wrapped Elin in every blanket she owned, and left her sleeping beneath Elias's watch. She did not trust him completely, but she trusted the fear in his eyes when he had seen the black lines beneath Elin's skin. They reached the village square before the first market bell. The public well stood beneath a cracked statue of the moon goddess, its opening sealed by a thick iron chain. Clara stopped. "Varric told us the well was nearly dry." Elias crouched beside the lock. Fresh scratches marked the metal. "This chain was placed here recently." He followed a shallow groove through the snow. 2 parallel tracks led from the well toward Varric's private storehouse. Clara's stomach tightened. Elias pulled a silver coin from his pocket and tied it to a length of cord. The coin carried no common mark. For one brief second, Clara thought she saw the outline of a crowned wolf before his thumb covered it. He lowered the coin between the bars. A soft splash came from far below. When he drew it back, its bright surface had turned black. "Shadow rot," he said. The same poison that entered my wound. Clara stared into the darkness beneath the chain. Then Elin is sick because of this water. And she will not be the only one. A door creaked nearby. Elias pulled Clara beneath the wooden footbridge just as two men crossed the square. They wore Varric's colors and carried empty barrels. One unlocked the well while the other watched the street. Instead of lowering buckets, they opened a narrow iron valve hidden behind the statue. Clear water rushed through a concealed pipe into the barrels. Clara's breath caught. The village well was poisoned, but somewhere beneath it, Varric had preserved a private supply. The men rolled the barrels toward his storehouse. Clara moved to follow, and Elias caught the edge of her sleeve. Carefully. His voice was barely louder than a wind. They waited, then crossed behind the meeting hall. A torn strip of red wax lay in the snow beside one barrel. Elias picked it up. The royal crest had been pressed into its surface. Relief supplies, he murmured. Clara looked toward the storehouse, where Varric claimed there had been no grain for weeks. He has been hiding food. We know what we saw. We do not yet know how much, or who else is involved. Children are starving, which is why we need proof he cannot bury. The coldness in his words angered her, but the grief beneath them stopped her reply. Before they could move, Mira stepped from behind the storehouse. Her fur-lined cloak was spotless, and her smile was sharp. So this is where the cursed girl brings strange men. Clara straightened. We were checking the well. Mira's gaze dropped to the blackened coin in Elias's hand, then to the royal wax. Her smile vanished. Within minutes, Varric's bell summoned the village. Clara stood before the council as whispers spread around her. Varric accused her of trespassing and theft, but when she lifted her chin, her mother's moon-shaped pendant slipped free of her dress. The color drained from his face. Only for a heartbeat, then his expression hardened. That night, behind a locked door, Varric spoke to Mira in a voice low enough to hide from everyone except the shadow beyond his window. The new moon comes tomorrow. By dawn, the ash-born girl must be ready. By evening, Frost Hollow had turned colder. Though the wind had fallen strangely still, Clara returned to the cottage beneath the weight of every whisper that followed her through the village. Elias walked beside her without speaking. He had watched Varric dismiss the blackened coin, watched the council laugh when Clara mentioned the hidden water, and watched fear spread faster than truth. Inside the cottage, Elin slept beneath 3 blankets, her breathing shallow but steady. Clara placed a cool cloth on the child's forehead and stared at the last jar of clean water. They will never believe me, she said. Elias stood near the dying fire. Not while fear gives Varric the answer he wants. Clara turned toward him. You speak as if you have seen this before. I have seen frightened people choose the easiest person to blame, his voice softened. And I have seen what happens when no one stops them. Before Clara could ask more, a bell rang in the square. Not the council bell, the ration bell. They followed the sound and found a woman kneeling beside an overturned basket. 2 small potatoes had rolled into the snow. Her children stood behind her, thin and silent. Varric held a ledger beneath one arm. Theft from the village storehouse carries a public sentence, he announced. Clara saw the woman's hand shaking. She also saw the flour dust on Mira's gloves and understood the truth. The basket had been planted. I took them, Clara said. Every face turned. Elias's jaw tightened, but he remained still. Varric smiled as if she had given him exactly what he wanted. Then you will stand at the north post until midnight. No cloak, no fire. The villagers drifted away while Clara was led to the wooden post beyond the meeting hall. Snow began to fall again, soft at first, then thicker. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, refusing to lower her head. An hour passed, then another. Doors closed, lamps disappeared. At last, footsteps approached through the snow. Elias stopped beside her and removed his coat, "Do not," Clara whispered. "You are still healing." He placed the coat around her shoulders anyway, then took his place beside her. "If this is punishment," he said, "you should not endure it alone." Clara looked at him through the white darkness. "Why do you care? I could ask you the same." She thought of the woman's children, of Elin sleeping with fever, of every door that had closed when Elias lay outside the gate. "I do not help them because they deserve it," she said. "I help them because I will not let their cruelty decide who I become." Something changed in his expression. The cold distance vanished, replaced by a grief so old it seemed carved into him. Clara swayed. Elias caught her before she fell, and warmth rushed from his hands through her frozen arms. It was not the warmth of a fire. It was deeper, alive, carrying the presence of something vast and powerful beneath his skin. Clara heard a low growl inside her mind. Not threatening, protective. She lifted her eyes to his. "What are you—" A sharp cry rose from the livestock pens. A dark shape moved between the fences, made of smoke and winter shadow. Elias stepped in front of Clara as the creature crossed the snow. He raised one hand, and the air itself seemed to tighten. Clara felt the weakness inside the shadow before she understood how. "The silver light," she said. "At its center." Elias trusted her without hesitation. Golden power flashed once, brief and controlled. The creature dissolved into black mist, harmless as it scattered into the night. But before it vanished, it lowered its head toward Elias and whispered in a voice older than the village, "Wolf King." Clara went still. Elias turned toward her, knowing she had heard every word. Clara waited until the last trace of black mist vanished before she spoke. "Wolf King." The title hung between them, heavier than the snow. Elias looked toward the darkened houses, then back at her. "Not here. You have lied to me since the moment I found you." "I concealed my name." "You concealed everything." Her voice remained low, but the hurt in it cut deeper than anger. Elias stepped closer, then stopped when she moved away. "I came to Frost Hollow because royal supplies were disappearing and reports from this village were false. I needed to know who was involved." Clara pulled his coat tighter around herself, though the warmth inside it had faded. "And I was what?" Another test he did not answer quickly enough. That was answer enough. "You watched me," she said. "You let me feed you, shelter you, trust you?" "At first, yes, I watched." The honesty stung more than another lie would have. "But after that first night, you were no longer part of an investigation." Clara met his silver eyes. "Then what was I?" Something unguarded passed across his face. The first person in years who gave me kindness without asking who I was. She wanted to believe him. That frightened her most. Before she could reply, hurried footsteps crossed the snow. Rowan, the old blacksmith, emerged from the alley behind the meeting hall. His face was pale beneath his gray beard. "There's no time," he whispered. "Varric knows the pendant has awakened." Clara stared at him. "You know what it is?" Rowan lowered his head. "I knew your parents." The world seemed to tilt. He led them to the forge, locked the door, and pulled a weathered map from beneath a floorboard. A narrow tunnel had been drawn from Varric's storehouse to the abandoned moon temple. "I saw him come from that tunnel 12 years ago," Rowan said. "He carried something that shone like moonlight. Your father confronted him. By morning, the temple was burning." Clara's fingers tightened around the map. "You said nothing. I was afraid." Rowan's voice broke. "He threatened my family. I have regretted my silence every day since." Elias looked at Clara, but he did not tell her what to do. She unfolded the map. "Show us the entrance." The tunnel beneath the storehouse smelled of damp stone and spoiled grain. Behind a false wall, they found stacked sacks bearing the royal crest, enough to feed Frost Hollow for months. Beside them lay a ledger filled with dates, prices, and names. Clara turned each page with growing disbelief. Varric had sold the relief supplies beyond the northern border. Deeper inside the tunnel, silver light pulsed through a half-open door. A dark wooden staff stood in the center of the chamber. At its head was a fractured crystal, glowing with the same light as Clara's pendant. She stepped closer. The moment her fingers touched it, the chamber disappeared. She saw her mother kneeling beside the moonwell. She saw Varric holding the broken crystal. She heard her father shouting that the village would die if the Moonheart remained divided. Then came fire, smoke, and her mother's arms pushing young Clara into a hidden passage. "Remember," her mother whispered, "you are not the curse. You are the keeper." Clara returned to herself with a gasp. Elias stood near, his hand half raised but not touching her. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. Clara looked at him for a long moment, then placed her trembling hand in his. "No more lies. No more lies," he promised. Slow applause sounded from the doorway. Varric stood there with Mira beside him and Elin held between two guards. His smile was calm. "How touching," he said. "The cursed girl finally found the truth, just in time to die for it." Varric's men closed around them before Clara could reach Elin. The child struggled weakly, her frightened eyes fixed on Clara. "Let her go," Clara said. Varric lifted the Moonheart staff from its stand, and silver light crawled across his fingers. "You still believe you are in a position to demand anything." Elias moved half a step forward. One guard tightened his hold on Elin. Elias stopped. Clara saw the choice in his face and understood. Whatever power he carried, he would not risk the child. Varric noticed too. His smile widened. "Take them to the square." By late afternoon, every villager in Frost Hollow had gathered beneath a sky turning dark with snow. Clara stood before the meeting hall with her hands bound. Elias was held inside a silver-lined iron cage near the north wall, while Rowan knelt beside the forge under guard. Elin had been locked inside the storehouse, where Clara could still see her small face through the window. Varric raised the blackened coin. The healing herbs from Clara's cottage, and the fractured staff for the crowd to see. "For years, we have suffered because the Ashbourne girl remained among us," he declared. "Now we know she poisoned the well and summoned the shadows." Murmurs spread through the square. Clara searched the familiar faces around her. People whose children she had cared for, people whose fever she had eased. One by one, they looked away. "The grain was hidden beneath his storehouse," Clara called out. "The royal seal was on every sack." Varric laughed softly. "Grain she planned to steal." Rowan forced himself upright. "She speaks the truth. I saw Varric leave the Moon Temple 12 years ago with the crystal." A guard shoved him back to his knees. Mira flinched, but she said nothing. Varric turned to Clara. "Confess, and perhaps the moon goddess will show mercy." Clara felt the cold pressing through her dress, but she lifted her chin. "I will not confess to your crimes." The crowd shifted uneasily. Varric's solemn expression cracked. "Then the goddess will judge you herself." He pointed toward Black Pine Forest. Beyond the gate, trees swayed beneath a gathering storm, their branches moving like dark hands. At moonrise, she will be sent into the forest. If she survives until dawn, she may return. If she does not, Frost Hollow will finally be free. Elin struck the storehouse window with both palms. "Clara did not hurt anyone!" Her voice barely reached the square. Mira looked toward the child, then down at her father's coat. A leather ledger protruded from the inner pocket. She remembered the hidden water, the royal wax, and every winter night her own table had remained full. For the first time, doubt outweighed obedience. Elias gripped the bars of his cage. Silver weakened the power beneath his skin, but it could not silence it completely. He closed his eyes and reached for the bond shared by every royal guard sworn to his blood. One command crossed the frozen miles. "Come now," Varric ordered Clara taken to the chapel until moonrise. As she passed the cage, Elias met her eyes. "I will not let them take you into that forest." Clara wanted to believe him. Then the first deep tremor rolled beneath the village. Elias tore the pendant from beneath his shirt. The spell hiding his scent shattered without sound. Royal power surged through Frost Hollow. Across the square, wolves dropped to their knees, breathless beneath an authority older than their fear. Varric turned slowly toward the cage. Elias opened his golden eyes. The king was no longer hiding. By moonrise, the storm had swallowed the road beyond Frost Hollow. Clara stood at the village gate with her hands bound, snow gathering in her hair and along the thin shoulders of her dress. Varric raised the Moonheart staff before the crowd. "If she returns at dawn, the goddess has spared her. If she does not, the curse dies with her." No one answered. Clara searched the faces she had known all her life. The baker whose son she had nursed through fever. The widow whose roof she had repaired. The mothers who had once placed sleeping children in her arms. Not one of them stepped forward. The gate opened. Black pine waited beyond it, dark and restless beneath the wind. Then metal struck stone behind them. Elias walked into the square. The silver cage stood open, its bars bent apart. His coat hung torn from one shoulder, and pale marks circled his wrists. But his steps were steady. He stopped between Clara and the forest. "Move," Varric ordered. Elias did not. "She goes nowhere." A nervous laugh passed through the crowd. Varric descended the steps and shoved both hands against Elias's chest. Elias moved back one pace, then lowered himself onto one knee. The laughter grew louder. Clara saw Mira stop smiling. Elias lifted his head. His eyes were no longer silver. They burned gold through the snow. "You call her the bad omen of this village?" His voice carried across the square without effort. "No. She is the only reason I have not leveled this place to the ground." The laughter died. A crack of golden light traveled across his face. The weary traveler vanished as though he had been made of smoke. His torn coat became a black royal mantle lined with gold. Dark armor formed beneath it, and the crowned woof of the northern throne blazed over his heart. Power rolled outward in a silent wave. Every woof in Frost Hollow dropped to their knees. Varric fought against it, his face tightening, but the snow received him like everyone else. Only Clara remained standing. Elias turned toward her, and the force surrounding the square softened before it reached her skin. He rose to his full height. "I have traveled across kingdoms searching for a golden heart among the ashes of selfishness, and I found it here, in hands trembling from cold, yet still willing to share warmth with a stranger." Clara remembered the bread in her palm, his frozen fingers closing around it, and the quiet way he had watched her, as though kindness were something he had stopped believing in. Caelan Thorn, Alpha King of the 7 Northern Packs, crossed the snow and untied her hands himself. He removed the royal mantle from his shoulders and wrapped it around hers. Warmth surrounded her at once. Then he faced the kneeling village. "From this day forward, she is no longer a rejected Omega. She is the woman this Alpha King owes a debt. Anyone who dares touch a single hair on her head challenges the full power of my crown." Ellen began to cry behind the storehouse window. Rowan bowed his head. Mira reached into Varric's coat and pulled free the hidden ledger. "He sold the royal grain," she said, her voice shaking. "He kept the clean water for us." Varric looked from the book to the villagers, and desperation stripped away the last of his dignity. Clara stepped beside Caelan.
He broke the Moonheart. He poisoned the well. He killed my parents and taught you to blame the child who survived." Rowan raised his voice. "She speaks the truth." The first royal guards appeared beyond the southern road, their banners cutting through the storm. Varric stared at them, then drove the staff into the frozen ground. Silver light turned black. The earth trembled beneath Frost Hollow. "From the village well!" Shadow rose in a twisting column, gathering itself into a towering shape above the rooftops. Kaelin moved in front of Clara as golden power flared around him, but Clara looked toward the abandoned moon temple and understood what no army could. The king could hold the darkness back. Only she could end it. The shadow above Frost Hollow bent toward the village, swallowing moonlight as it moved. Kaelin raised both hands, and a wall of golden power spread across the square. The darkness struck it without sound, forcing him back one step through the snow. "Get everyone inside," he commanded. Royal guards rushed toward the homes, while villagers carried children and elders away from the well. Clara turned toward the abandoned moon temple. The pendant at her throat pulled against its chain, warm and urgent. "Clara, stay behind me," Kaelin called. She met his golden eyes. "You cannot defeat something that is still being fed." Then she ran. The royal mantle streamed behind her as she crossed the square. Mira caught up near the temple steps, holding Varric's ledger against her chest. "The staff," she said breathlessly. "The crystal inside it is the missing piece." Clara looked back. Varric stood beside the well, gripping the Moonheart staff while black light climbed his arms. Every pulse from the crystal strengthened the shadow above them. "Get Ellen to Rowan," Clara said. Mira hesitated. "What are you going to do?" "What my mother died trying to finish, inside the temple." Frost covered the broken altar. Clara pressed her pendant into a crescent-shaped hollow at its center. Stone shifted beneath her feet, revealing steps descending into silver darkness. She followed them to the Moonwell chamber. At its heart floated the fractured Moonheart, dim and incomplete. Kaelin's voice touched her mind like distant thunder. "Clara, wait for me." She placed both palms against the cold crystal. "I cannot. The village does not have that much time." Above her, the temple shook. Varric entered the chamber, carrying the staff. "Your parents believed mercy could save Frost Hollow," he said. "Mercy gave us hunger." "No," Clara answered. "Your fear gave us hunger. Your lies kept it alive." He reached for her pendant, but Mira appeared between them. "Enough, father." Varric stared at his daughter as if she were a stranger. Mira's hands trembled, yet she did not move. "You told me everything you did was for the village. You meant it was for you." His attention shifted for 1 second. Clara seized the staff. The crystal at its head flared silver, then separated from the dark wood and flew into her waiting hands. Varric lunged toward it, but the shadow pouring from the well curled around him. He called for the power he had controlled for years. This time, it did not obey. The darkness drew him backward into the mist, and his voice faded beneath the rising wind. Clara turned to the Moonheart. The missing fragment fit perfectly into its broken center, but the cracks remained. A memory opened inside her mind. Her mother's hands, her father's voice, the old promise of the keepers. Protect life without seeking to possess it. Clara pressed her palm against the crystal. Silver light flowed from her veins into every fracture. Pain became cold, then emptiness. The darkness rushed toward her, searching for fear. Before it could reach her heart, golden warmth surrounded her. Kaelin entered the chamber, weakened but standing. He placed his hand opposite hers on the Moonheart. "You are not supposed to do this alone. Neither were you." Their powers met inside the crystal. In that instant,
Clara saw the village Kaelin had once failed to save. He saw a 10-year-old girl hiding beneath a burning temple, believing her parents had died because of her. "It was never your fault," he whispered. Clara looked into his eyes. "And you cannot protect everyone by refusing to trust anyone." Something ancient awakened between them. Not a chain, a door. The moonheart blazed brighter than dawn. Light raced through the underground water, across the village wells, and beneath the frozen fields. Above them, the great shadow dissolved into harmless mist. The storm stopped.
Clara heard Aelin laughing somewhere beyond the temple as the dark marks faded from her skin. Then a green shoot pushed through the snow beside the altar. Clara smiled, but the room tilted. Kaelin caught her before she reached the ground. As he held her, a silver wolf opened its eyes within her soul for the first time, and the bond between them whispered one word neither was ready to speak aloud. Mate. Clara woke at sunrise with Kaelin seated beside her, his hand resting near hers, but never closing the distance without permission. Beyond the temple doors, Frost Hollow had changed. Clear water overflowed from the village well. Snow slid from the rooftops in shining sheets, and the first green shoots pushed through fields that had been gray for years. Aelin ran into the chamber and wrapped both arms around Clara. The dark marks beneath the child's skin were gone. Rowan followed more slowly, leaning on a wooden cane, his eyes bright with relief. By midday, the royal guards had opened Varric's hidden storehouses. Grain, medicine, blankets, and sealed barrels of clean water were carried into the square and distributed to every family. The prisoners beneath the meeting hall were released. Mira surrendered her father's ledger and offered herself for judgment. Kaelin did not excuse what she had done, but Clara asked that her final choice be remembered beside her earlier cruelty. Justice, she had learned, was not the same as revenge. That afternoon, the people of Frost Hollow gathered before the restored well. One by one, they apologized. Clara listened without lowering her eyes. "I will not carry hatred for the rest of my life," she told them. "But forgiveness does not erase responsibility. You will rebuild what fear allowed you to destroy, and no Omega will ever be offered as a sacrifice here again." No one argued. Kaelin stood behind her, silent, letting every word remain hers. Later, when the square had emptied, he joined Clara beside the moonwell. "I came here believing I had the right to test everyone," he said. "I watched you before I trusted you. I was wrong." Clara studied the man beneath the crown, not the king who could force a village to kneel. "Then do not test me with another lie. Never again." She gave him her conditions. Frost Hollow would be rebuilt with everything Varric had stolen. Omega sacrifice would be outlawed across the northern packs. Every accused wolf would receive a public hearing, and she would not accept a crown simply because fate had tied their souls together. Kaelin accepted each demand without hesitation. Then he lowered himself onto one knee before her. His voice was quiet, meant only for Clara. "The curse of this village ended because of your kindness, but your journey as my queen has only just begun." Clara raised one eyebrow. "Does your queen have the right to disagree with you for the first time?" Kaelin smiled without restraint. "I am counting on it." Several weeks later, Frost Hollow's fields were green again. Rowan raised a stone memorial for Clara's parents beside the Moon Temple. Mira worked under royal supervision while awaiting judgment. Ellen arrived at the royal carriage carrying a warm loaf of bread. Clara broke it in half and handed one piece to Kaelin. He looked down at it. "The first time we met, you gave me half of everything you had, and you still owe me," Clara said. He touched his forehead gently to hers. "Then I will spend my life repaying the debt." Perhaps that is the lesson Frost Hollow leaves with us. True strength is not measured by how many people fear us, but by how much kindness we protect when fear tells us to turn away. Clara's smallest choice changed a king, exposed a lie, and saved an entire village. In my view, the most powerful people are often those who remain gentle without becoming silent. What would you have done if sharing your last piece of bread meant risking everything? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where courage finds the forgotten, justice reaches the powerless, and love recognizes the heart before the crown.